Marc Marquez focused on enhancing his single-lap qualifying speed instead of following Ducati's 2025 development direction during the Misano MotoGP test. Bagnaia fined over controversial radio communication. Francesco Bagnaia led the Misano MotoGP test after the San Marino Grand Prix, but expressed his dislike for the new radio system, which led to a fine for miscommunication. Let's discuss. Watch until the end. Pecco Bagnaia wrapped up the final official test of the 2024 MotoGP season on a positive note, following his challenging race at the San Marino Grand Prix. Despite not being able to overcome Marc Marquez on his home track, the Ducati factory rider showed resilience as he turned his attention to testing the Desmosedici GP24, which featured some aerodynamic tweaks to its fairing. While the GP24 saw refinements, Ducati refrained from introducing the first prototype of the GP25, as team manager Davide Tardozzi explained that the next generation model is still in the development stages. Bagnaia, like his Ducati teammates Jorge Martin and Enea Bastianini, was focused on testing aspects crucial for next season. However, unlike Martin and Bastianini, who were able to test the aerodynamic changes, Bagnaia's attention was diverted elsewhere. Bagnaia explained his priorities for the day, stating, "I was primarily focused on 2025 developments. I didn't try the new fairing like Jorge and Enea did, as they were both happy with it. Instead, I concentrated on some other areas that we still need to improve, particularly in terms of electronics." Bagnaia acknowledged that while these advancements won't be available for use in the current season, they show promise for the future. Unfortunately, the updates aren't something we can utilize this year because they need further development. Specifically, the electronic system has some potential, but today it was hard to gauge since lap times remained consistent regardless of whether we used new or worn tires. Elaborating on his session, Bagnaia highlighted some impressive lap times he achieved. "I clocked a 1:30.9 with a medium tire that had already seen 22 laps of use. Then I switched to a fresh tire and managed a 1:30.6. Honestly, if I had really pushed on the medium compound under the right conditions, I think I could have set an even faster time. But the track wasn't in ideal shape, so it didn't make much sense to attempt a time attack." Bagnaia also shed light on why he chose not to test the aerodynamic updates during this test, despite his teammates giving it a try. The Italian had already tested the new aero package at Silverstone, but quickly decided against it. "I tried the aero at Silverstone, but after just a brief run I took it off. I didn't like the feel at all," Bagnaia remarked. Another aspect of the test that garnered attention was Bagnaia's experience with MotoGP's new radio communication system, set to debut in the 2025 season. This new tech, which has been trialled by riders like Fabio Quartararo, aims to improve communication between riders and race direction, similar to systems used in Formula One. However, Bagnaia didn't hold back in expressing his disapproval of the system, comparing his anticipated fines for not using it to the famous fines NBA legend Michael Jordan received. "I feel like I'm going to get fined like Michael Jordan did in the NBA. He wore red shoes when they were supposed to be white, and I'll probably be penalized every race for not using this radio system. I tested it, and after just 30 seconds of holding my fingers in place to activate it, it hurt. Now imagine having to do that for 40 minutes while riding a MotoGP bike. It's just not practical." Bagnaia emphasized that with the current systems in place, such as the dashboard and pit boards, there is no real need for additional communication that could serve as a distraction. We ride bikes that require full focus. Adding more communication systems could interfere with that, and it's not something we need. On a brighter note, Bagnaia was enthusiastic about Michelin's new front tire compound for 2025, which he tested after the lunch break. For a rider like Bagnaia, who relies heavily on braking to execute his race strategy, the new tire was a welcome improvement. "I really like the new front tire Michelin is introducing for 2025. It's what I've been needing. I'm a rider who uses a lot of front-end braking when entering corners, and this new compound is excellent in that regard," Bagnaia explained. "While it's a bit heavier, making quick direction changes more challenging, the added grip and stability are well worth it." Bagnaia was particularly impressed with the tire's performance when following other bikes, noting that the pressure wasn't as intense as with the current compound. "When you're behind another rider, the front tire usually suffers, but this new one doesn't seem to feel the same level of pressure, which could be a significant advantage." The 2022 world champion also emphasized the tire's braking prowess, pointing out that it allows him to brake more confidently than the current rubber. Right now, I can't brake the way I want with the tires we have because the front compound doesn't hold. But with this new one, I feel like I have more control and margin for error. I tested it at low-speed corners like turns 2 and 4 to see if it would slip or lose grip, but it held up remarkably well. In one of his final observations, Bagnaia mentioned the power of his Ducati Desmosedici in comparison to Honda's RC213V. During the tyre test, he found himself behind Joan Mir, but his bike's sheer power left the Honda rider trailing. I only had about 30 minutes to test the new tyre, and I was riding behind Joan Mir. But even though I was trailing him through turn 1, I managed to overtake him coming out of turn 6 before I even shifted into third gear. The Ducati's acceleration was incredible, and while the top speed was decent, I was surprised at how slow Honda's acceleration was. Wrapping up his reflections, Bagnaia touched on his physical condition. After the pain and struggles he endured during the San Marino GP, he received much-needed relief during the test. I took a painkiller earlier this morning, which worked great. I also had 2 patches on the stitches that have been bothering me. Those things really helped, and the effect lasted a long time. Overall, I felt pretty good today, Bagnaia concluded. Marc Marquez has revealed that during the post-San Marino MotoGP test at Misano, he only focused on trying Michelin's 2025 spec tyres in preparation for next season, while fine-tuning his current Gresini Ducati GP23 setup. Fresh off his 3rd MotoGP win in just over a week at Misano, 1 sprint victory and 2 full-length wins, the 6-time world champion expertly handled the tricky conditions, chasing down and overtaking Pecco Bagnaia. His victory allowed him to close the gap to Jorge Martin in the standings, now trailing by 53 points. While the factory Ducati Lenovo team used the one-day test to experiment with 2025 spec electronics, Marquez prioritized refining his GP23 bike from this season. We focused on the bike we've been using and tried a few things they've implemented during some Grand Prix, mainly to discard them. We tested small adjustments, including suspension tweaks, in case an issue arises, so we're prepared. The final session, where everything usually comes together, we stuck to what we had been using yesterday. That sums up our day. Despite his multiple wins, Marquez acknowledged that his title chances are slim, but he's still determined to finish the season strong. His main focus now is improving his single-lap performance, particularly in qualifying. With only 2 pole positions and 4 front-row starts this year, Marquez understands that qualifying improvements are crucial if he's to stay competitive in the championship hunt. We mainly worked on setup fundamentals. We made a few adjustments, but ultimately reverted to what I'm comfortable with, especially for race pace. Moving forward, the key for me is improving my time attacks. Regarding Michelin's 2025 tyre specs, Marquez gave a cautious nod of approval, but pointed out that the new tyres felt vastly different. I tried the 2025 tyre and it's completely different. The biggest change is in tyre stability, especially under heavy braking. The tyre performs better once you brake late, but in the first lap out of the box, the bike feels heavy, almost as if it's hard to ride. They still need to improve the tyre's flexibility. That said, for our setup, braking stability is a strength, so I'm not too concerned with that particular issue, he concluded. Keep warming up your engines. See you at the next race.